It's a busy day here in the NFL, and we have you covered from a fantasy football perspective. Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. I'm Jamey Eisenberg. That's Dave Richard. That's Pete Sampras joining us remotely from his headquarters just before his big tennis match against Dan Schneider today to raise money for the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital as part of our Draft-a-thon. Adam, are you ready to go? You ready to take on Dan and win this title, this best sports achievement of your life?
Yes, I'm more of an Agassi guy, always was, but he said that he double faulted 9 times against his friend over the weekend or last week. He said if that starts happening, he's going to start serving underhand. I am not losing to someone who's going to serve underhand. Give me a break.
All right, we have the tennis match of a lifetime coming up later today. Hopefully it'll be live streamed. I'm sure Adam can give us the details on that before the end of the show. All right, busy day going on in the NFL, busy week going on in the NFL. It started on Monday with CeeDee Lamb getting his contract extension. Jamar Chase is back at practice. We got Jahmyr Gibbs back at practice. So, Dave, we get asked all the time about the first round. What should I do? We were just on a show on HQ, and Haley Sutton and Chris Hassel were dealing with their first-round picks, and there's a lot of movement going on because Lamb is now back at the top of the draft, or at least one of the first few picks. Jamar Chase feeling a little bit more safe in the middle, and Jahmyr Gibbs may be an end of the first-round pick. Let's start with the receivers because obviously that's a big talking point. We know Christian McCaffrey is going to go first. The receiver order for you of the guys that are after McCaffrey, it's Lamb, it's Tyreek Hill, it's Jefferson, Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Put them in order and it makes sense.
My order starts with CeeDee Lamb, and it makes sense to me because he's the one of this group that could see 11 targets per game, 12 targets per game. We saw that after the bye from the Cowboys last year. He and Dak, they were basically the entire Dallas Cowboys offense with a little bit of Jake Ferguson mixed in. I think that continues, so I have absolutely no problem taking CeeDee Lamb as soon as number 2 overall. That's different from our ADP, which is still reflecting the weeks where he was holding out and people were nervous to put him on their fantasy team. After that, I've got Tyreek Hill, and then I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that he's just a little bit safer than Justin Jefferson and then Jamar Chase. That is in full PPR, but that's my top 5 at receiver.
Adam, usually you're asking us the questions. I'm going to ask you the questions today. So your order of the top receivers, is it different from Dave's? Who's at the top for you? Is it Hill or is it Lamb? And then really talk about Jamar Chase because he's been holding in this whole time. He didn't miss practice for a couple of days there, but he's been with the team. Now he's back at practice. Are you more comfortable with him maybe as the number 3 receiver also?
Yeah, practicing 2 days in a row, that definitely made me more comfortable. He's my number 3 receiver. My rankings are different from Dave's. I've been Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 1 the entire offseason. CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver 2. Hill had 171 targets last year. He may not have quite as many as CeeDee Lamb, but Hill's done it every year of his career pretty much. He's had a little bit of ups and downs, but he's been so good. CeeDee Lamb has done it for 1 year and maybe more like 1/2 of a year where he was incredible. I'm downgrading him to wide receiver 2, but still I go 1 Hill, 2 Lamb, 3 Jamar Chase. And Chase is interesting because of all these guys, maybe not St. Brown because he doesn't have the yards capabilities, but you look at Jefferson, Hill, and Lamb, Chase hasn't quite done what those guys have done, even in stretches. It's a little bit concerning, but I think we're going to finally get this great year from Chase and hopefully Higgins and Burrow as well. Like a real standout year. He's come just short of that. So I go Chase 3. I go St. Brown 4. He doesn't have the upside of Jefferson. I don't see St. Brown getting more than maybe 1,600 yards. The other guys that get closer to 1,900 yards. But he only had 4 end zone targets last year, and he still caught 10 touchdowns. So I'll go St. Brown 4 and Jefferson 5 because of Darnold.
And see, what you're getting, and this is why a lot of people are confused, is that I have a different order as well. So you have yours, Adam has his. We see ADP. For me, it's Tyreek Hill number 1. I don't think the ADP is going to change. I think it's close enough that people are still back and forth between Hill and Lamb. So I do think that Hill's ADP will keep him at the top spot. But for me, it's Hill and Lamb. We're all in agreement. Those are the first 2.
Yep.
I actually go Jefferson 3rd. I'm not so concerned about Sam Darnold because I never thought J.J. McCarthy was going to be this superhero that was going to come in and save Jefferson. I think he's going to lead the NFL in targets. He's going to dominate at that wide receiver spot like he has. He's number 1 in NFL history by 11 yards in terms of yards per game over Calvin Johnson. 99 yards per game is what this guy averages in his career. It's hard to overlook what Kevin O'Connell has done to unlock Justin Jefferson, and I think that'll be the same thing going forward. Jamar Chase, you say it, Adam, he hasn't had the same heights, but in 9 games last year, he was averaging over 20 PPR points per game with Joe Burrow. So when Burrow is healthy, Chase is healthy, he's right there. He may not be at the same level, but right knocking on the door. So maybe this is the year. And St. Brown, to me, is the safest of the bunch, but also I think the lowest ceiling of the bunch, which is why he comes in after that. At the end of the first round, for a long time, we were taking Jahmyr Gibbs as the fourth, fifth running back, depending on how it was coming off the board. You know, we know the top three. It was McCaffrey, it was Hall, it was Robinson, and then Gibbs was in the discussion to be fourth with Saquon Barkley, with Jonathan Taylor. So, Adam, I'll start with you. When you look at Gibbs and you look at this Detroit backfield, are you confident in Gibbs, who's now had 2 injuries? One was undisclosed, but reportedly could have been a hamstring injury. The second one we know was a hamstring injury. Are you still confident taking him in the back end of the first round, or where does Gibbs settle for you? And then how do you feel about David Montgomery?
I have a really hard time with Jahmyr Gibbs versus Kyren Williams and Saquon Barkley. I take him after Jonathan Taylor now, so he's anywhere from running back 5 to 7 for me, depending on the day. It's like a coin flip, but I am comfortable with him at the 1-2 turn. Now, I'll say there's some bad stuff, right? The last 9 games of the season, you look at these two guys. This was after Montgomery came back from an injury. Jahmyr Gibbs was RB10 per game. Montgomery was RB20 per game. And Gibbs was RB10 per game when he averaged 1 touchdown per game. But he was on pace for only 245 total touches in that stretch. He's going to have to get a bigger workload. I think it will come. I think you can use the eyeball test to see Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the most talented running backs in football. They will get him the ball. If he loses all of the goal line work, it could be a problem. But, you know, when comparing him to a guy like Barkley, who really hasn't been the same player in like 5 years, Kyren Williams, who's nowhere near the prospect that Jahmyr Gibbs is, I'm just kind of going to bet on talent and an offense that's almost guaranteed to be top 5 in scoring. So if you want to take him at the 1-2 turn, I'm cool with it.
I would take him just after that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Montgomery, round 6 PPR.
Yeah.
5, 6, 4.5 PPR. Round 4 non-PPR.
I thought he was done talking, but he had to mention Montgomery, so that's my bad. I agree with him on Jahmyr Gibbs, but even though he finished RB10 in those last 9 games, that was still over 16 PPR points per game. That's what he averaged with Montgomery in the field in those 9 games. And down the stretch, they were very close in terms of work inside the 5-yard line, and that includes touchdowns as well. In the playoffs, that changed. Montgomery had that role on lock. But I wonder if in the regular season they split it just a little bit more, maybe not 50-50, but maybe 40-60 in favor of Montgomery, and that could help Jahmyr Gibbs. And he's a second-year player. This is his second year around the block. He's going to get more catches. He's certainly more explosive. That's a good offensive line, and I think Jahmyr Gibbs can be explosive. By the way, in those playoff games, when Montgomery had that touchdown role, Gibbs averaged almost 17 PPR points per game in those 3 games. I have no problem taking Jahmyr Gibbs in early round 2.
He's a special talent. I just get concerned with these soft tissue injuries because when they start to occur, they tend to creep up and continue to be a problem all throughout the course of the season. So hopefully he's going to be okay. Same thing with McCaffrey dealing with the calf injury. You just never want to see these guys start to deal with these things close to the season, and hopefully Gibbs will not have a setback at all during the year. And look, it goes for both of these guys. If Montgomery misses any time, we saw that with Gibbs. 26 points per game or more in 2 of the 3 games that Montgomery missed. We didn't really see last year with Gibbs out because when he was banged up, Montgomery was banged up also. If Gibbs misses any time, Montgomery's going to be a top 10 running back in this offense.
That's
he
true.
may not catch as many passes as Gibbs, but the touchdown potential, we saw it 2 years ago. Jamal Williams in that same role led the NFL with 17 touchdowns. Let's talk about another backfield here that's in the news, and that's Pittsburgh. We know it hasn't been a great preseason for them. I said spring training. Great preseason for them, but Jaylen Warren, dealing with a hamstring injury, says that he will play in week 1. How are you viewing Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren right now, if in fact Warren will be good to go?
I don't want to draft either of these running backs with any of my first 5 picks. And I'm taking Najee ahead of Warren, and I've kind of been on that bandwagon all offseason long. It's because I think he's got the shot to score more touchdowns than Warren. Warren's going to blow him away in terms of catches. But I'm also very concerned about how this offense will operate with Arthur Smith now calling the plays. And we saw Arthur Smith last year with the Falcons utilize 2 running backs, 3 running backs from week to week. He's got Cordero Patterson with him now. He's going to get some touches. Warren should be involved. I don't think there are necessarily cut and dried roles for any of the 3 running backs in Pittsburgh, but I do want to bet on talent. Najee looks okay. It's just that offensive line doesn't look quite as okay for Pittsburgh as we've been used to seeing. So it's not going to be until round 6 when I take any of these guys on my fantasy team. Najee first, Warren a couple rounds later, way more than a couple rounds later if it's non-PPR, and I'm not drafting Cordero Patterson.
I was actually looking forward to seeing if Warren were to miss any time, how Najee would operate, because he's closed the last 2 seasons despite being viewed as a bust, understandably so, at a very high level, and as you mentioned, Dave, mostly because of the touchdowns. So we'll see how these guys are used in Arthur Smith's offense. If both are getting 200 carries, because that's the potential. Tyler Algier in the secondary role for the Falcons last year had 180 carries. So if they're both getting 200-plus carries, which is a possibility for what Arthur Smith does, then Warren's value should be very good because of his catches, but Najee's still a low-end number 2 running back. Adam, I want to talk to you about the Carolina backfield because Jonathan Brooks placed on the PUP list. He's going to miss the first 4 games of the season. That was kind of the expectation with how they told us they were going to handle him. We thought maybe 2 or 3 games, but now we know it's going to be at least 4 games. So when are you jumping in the Jonathan Brooks pool, and how quickly are you looking to get Chuba Hubbard after that? Or are you just looking to target Chuba Hubbard at this point because he closed last season playing at a high level and maybe can get off to a great start without Brooks there?
Yeah, I was always a little hesitant on Jonathan Brooks just because I don't think this offense is going to be that good. I think it'll be a lot better. And, guy coming off a torn ACL, I try to stay away from those guys. Now that he's going to miss at least 4 games, I think Jonathan Brooks is a round 9 pick. And I think Chuba Hubbard really could go before him or after him, but should be right around the same time. Hubbard got a ton of work. Didn't do a lot with it. But remember, they upgraded their offensive line. They have a new head coach. They're going to be better. So if he gets the same amount of work that he had last year, I'll just look at my notes right here. Chuba Hubbard in his last 11 games was on pace for 284 carries and 40 catches. If he's on that kind of pace, even if it's only for 4 games, he's going to be a valuable player, someone you're going to want to draft. So I think round 9 for both of these guys. I'm probably more likely to take Brooks because Hubbard is what he is. He's a Jag. Brooks could be something a little bit more special, but my gut feeling is Carolina does not really give us any type of difference maker at the running back position this year. More of a bye week fill-in kind of, or a low-end number 2 kind of guy.
Hubbard more of a 0 RB, hero RB type of target because, again, those first 4 games he should be the featured guy for the Panthers. And then hopefully if you're looking solid coming out of your draft, but even as a trade chip, you can look to acquire Jonathan Brooks at some point during the season, and then maybe he is good to go in December into January. But certainly for the fantasy playoffs, it would be nice to have a healthy Jonathan Brooks because we know he could be that special talent that the Panthers drafted him to be. A couple other guys on the pup list just to make mention of. Marshawn Lloyd is going to miss the first 4 games, so Josh Jacobs should be a late second, early third round pick because Lloyd may not make an impact until the second half of the season. Jacobs looking like the featured guy there. I wouldn't worry too much about A.J. Dillon. And T.J. Hawkinson is also going to open the season on the pup list. Same with Tyler Higbee, so a couple tight ends. We expected them to be out earlier in the year, and so we'll see what happens there. Dave, quickly, we have the cut day today in the NFL, and they haven't officially been cut yet, but 2 guys in Denver that may draw some interest in trade, but are not going to be part of the Broncos, Samaje Perine and Tim Patrick. Just quickly on the Broncos backfield, without Perine there, Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin, how much does their status rise?
Their status won't rise because I figured Perine wasn't going to be there anyway, and I had already moved Javonte Williams. He's the Broncos running back that I would prefer. Late round 6 into round 7 for him. And McLaughlin, good late round pick. Round 10, round 11 is someone who might be a change of pace running back until he can finally get his act together on pass protection. And then if Javonte Williams struggles, maybe we could see McLaughlin take a step up.
McLaughlin could be fun. Last year in terms of running backs with 50 or more carries, second in the NFL in yards per carry behind Devon Achane. So a lot of speed. Hopefully he can make a little bit of production in the passing game, and we know that's something that Bo Nix will do and something Sean Payton will do as well. All right, we're going to take a break right now. We come back and get into the meat of our show, which is taking apart our pick-by-pick series. We all drafted 2 teams in our pick-by-pick series. You saw it yesterday on Spotlight, and we'll see how we grade our teams. That's coming out next here on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. I'm Jamey, that's Dave, that's Andre. We're talking about our pick-by-pick series where we each took 2 teams in a 12-team PPR league. You'll see the stories on the site. And so the idea is that we're each going to give you a strategy and maybe some players to follow if you're picking in that particular draft slot. So we're not going to show you the whole draft board. We're just going to show you the teams that we picked. And my teams are up first, and Dave and Adam are going to critique them, maybe praise them. Who knows? But this is the team from the 2nd overall pick. And so I still took Tyreek Hill as the number 1 wide receiver ahead of CeeDee Lamb after Christian McCaffrey came on the board. You see 2 wide receivers with my first 2 picks, 2 running backs. This is a very heavy running back build for me. And even though it's not very heavy in the running back position, this is still more than I typically take, 3 in the first 6 rounds. But you see the team here. And Adam, you're going to be up first to critique this draft. So what stands out to you? What do you like? What do you dislike? And again, we're going off the format of starting 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and a flex in a 1 quarterback league with 6 points for all touchdowns.
What stands out to me is that I didn't know if aliens existed, but one of them apparently inhabited your body and drafted this team. Because 2 wide receivers in your first 6 picks, like where is my friend Jamey Eisenberg? No, I looked at your Montgomery pick, I looked at the full draft board, and really there was no wide receiver there worth taking. You'd made the right pick there. Christian Watson was good in round 7. I think I like the team, I don't love it because in a 3-receiver PPR league, I'd rather be stronger at wide receiver than running back. So if I could go back and just pick one pick that I would do differently, I would take George Pickens over Joe Mixon. It's so easy to look at the board after the draft is done and make these comments, but you had Jacobs at that point. I thought maybe you'd go with your third wide receiver in round 4, maybe take Pickens or Pittman or something like that. You took Mixon, so that would be the only thing. But, running back heavy, good for you. It's fun to try new things, Jamey.
That's right, 100%.
You did that, and so this kind of looks like a team that I would take, given the Packers that are on and all the running backs that you took early on. But I do worry about your wide receiver 3 spot and your flex spot. If the wide receiver 3 is what we're talking about, it's Watson, it's Jameson Williams. I think Watson's your guy to begin the season. Hopefully he stays healthy. He delivers like a number 1 receiver like we've seen him do before. Really, there's huge upside there, but it all comes down to just how often he can stay on the field for the Green Bay Packers. But if he's out, I think you're in trouble in that receiver spot. Or, and I even hate bringing this into the universe, but if Drake London underwhelms this year,
sure,
that's going to make him more of a wide receiver 3 than a wide receiver 2. And I know that you and I both view London as more of a wide receiver 1 anyway. So on the surface, I think you drafted awesome. You've got 2 guys that I would take in round 2 in London and Jacobs. And of course, Mixon in round 4. I think that that's good value. Most of these picks are good value. I worry about your receiver depth, and I'm not at all worried about your quarterback depth, Jamey. You got Dak Prescott. You stole him from the rest of the league. That was a good pick.
And so that's something to bring up. We talked about this a little bit on our podcast this morning, is waiting on quarterbacks if you're so inclined to do so. This was an interesting draft because we saw a lot of the, I think, first 6 or 7 guys come off the board in the round 3 to 5 range. Dak Prescott was in round 11, so if you are going to try and wait, you're going to see maybe Jordan Love, maybe Dak Prescott, maybe Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Brock Purdy too, Tagovailoa. You get the idea that there's lots of good quarterbacks you could potentially wait on. But play the board. Once I saw everybody had gotten their quarterbacks, I'm just going to kind of wait it out a little bit. And Dak Prescott fell to a good enough spot that I felt comfortable taking him before the rest of the league started taking their second quarterbacks in this format. All right, so I posted on X the teams that we drafted to get grades. And so let's see how they graded this particular draft if we have the Twitter poll here in terms of what it looks like. So here's this team from team number 2. Majority of the, I don't remember how many votes it was, but gave it a B. So we appreciate giving it an A. But most of the graph grades here, you'll see, I think will be in the B range. But take a look at the A's and the C's and see how many people voted for that.
Did you vote on your own poll? Because I see that check mark next to A.
No. Whoever in production put it up there, could be Sharon, gave it an A. So we appreciate that. But in any event, or it could be Thomas Schaefer, but we got a B grade on this team. So let's go to the other team that I drafted, which is from the 8th spot, and this was with Justin Jefferson as the first player coming off the board. Again, a little bit more running back than I'm used to drafting, for me at least, especially going in the 2nd and 3rd round. So as you take a look at this, T. Higgins, Lamar Jackson, as we go through it, Dave, you're up first. So how would you pick apart this team?
Dude, you did it again. Your first 8 picks, only 3 wide receivers in a 3-receiver, 1 flex league. Yep. So you're surprising us at every turn, Jamey Eisenberg. And if you're picking at 8th overall and you got Justin Jefferson, I like it a lot, especially if it's full PPR. I think he's falling a little bit because people are nervous about Sam Darnold. I was one of those people for about 48 hours. And then I went back and I watched Darnold's preseason play, went back to how he looked last year, recognized that Justin Jefferson is an amazing wide receiver, and I'm willing to bank on Jefferson in full PPR because I think he'll get 10 targets a game. I think he'll get a ton of catches. I think he'll get a lot of yards. It's the touchdowns that worry me, so I'm not quite as bullish in non-PPR leagues. You took T. Higgins in round 4. That happens to be a player that I'm a little bit more nervous on than you are. I'll give you the chance to talk about T. Higgins down the line. But I know that when you took him, Brandon Ayuk was on the board, Rashee Rice was on the board. I believe that those are 2 receivers that I have ranked ahead of T. Higgins. As long as Chase is healthy, I'm worried about T. Higgins never being more than about 13, 14 PPR points per game. But given the structure of your team, and I like your receiver depth better now than on the first team, I think this is an A team, even with T. Higgins being a little sooner than I would have taken him.
Well, Adam, you're a T. Higgins guy, so why don't you jump in right there and defend T. Higgins? And I know you would take him, you like to wait for him in round 5 based on his ADP, but we know receivers get pushed up in any of our analyst drafts. So I guess that would have been a spot you would have considered him, maybe Ayuk, maybe Rashee Rice over him. But I'm a T. Higgins guy. I know you are as well.
I would have taken him over those guys, actually. And he was going in the middle of round 3 last year. I am completely willing to forget about last year. He got hurt. Burrow was hurt. They played like maybe 2 games together, maybe 3, where they were both really healthy. So I love T. Higgins. He's got, I think, one of the best ADPs in fantasy, kind of back end of round 5. Totally fine in round 4. Honestly, I think he's fine at the 3-4 turn in a 3-receiver league. My critique of your team is a little bit different. I think your team is basically going to come down to Kyren Williams, whether or not he stays healthy. There's nothing you can do about that. But I look at your bench, and I don't love your bench. I feel like after the Spears pick, who I think would be your flex, Palmer, Chubb, Polk, Lockett, Mason, Gibson, I think Palmer's the only one that is start-worthy without some type of injury to one of their teammates. Just want to know your thoughts on that. I don't know. I don't know if we knew about Nick Chubb being on the PUP list, but do you regret anything about your bench?
No, again, I'm looking for upside. I do think Polk could be the #1 receiver for the Patriots, and maybe Drake May, when he takes over, will unlock that. But we know Jacoby Brissett has done a good job supporting his receivers despite his own failures. So I didn't mind taking him there. Tyler Lockett was basically free. So if he's anything close to what Tyler Lockett has been, then that's a great pick in that spot. Jordan Mason's is a lottery ticket. Antonio Gibson is a smaller lottery ticket, more like a scratch-off. But if something happens to Ramondre Stevenson, we could see Gibson in a starring role, even on that team, could still be productive. So it's not the best bench, obviously, but, when you're drafting with such esteemed fantasy knowledgeable people like we are, it's tough to always get the players that you want. So you're taking a chance in some cases, in some of the most upside. I will say this about Chubb. We did know the news that he was on the PUP list at that point. It just felt easy to take him at that point, knowing that if he does come back and have that second half push that we're waiting for, then you're talking about a difference maker and a league winner. So round 10, I believe, is when I took him. I have no problem taking him in that range. Again, you know what your team looks like by that point, and you're taking somebody that can hopefully help you win a fantasy championship. All right, let's see what the folks from X, Twitter, whatever we're calling it these days, say. Another A vote from production, so we like that. This one was more slanted with an A and a B grade, so not as many C's and D's in the votes there. So I appreciate everybody supporting this roster, and we'll see if Jefferson, Williams, and the like can lead them to a fantasy championship. All right, we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, it's time now to take a look at Dave's teams after the break, and we'll see how Adam picks it apart. Now I get to wear the professor hat and see how Dave did with his 2 selections in our 12-team PPR pick by pick. That's next on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. I'm Jamey, that's Dave, that's Roger. We're taking a look at some teams in our pick-by-pick series and breaking them down. Again, you'll see the pick-by-pick series on CBSSports.com later this week. This is where we each take 2 teams in a 12-team PPR league, start 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, and a flex. 6 points for all passing touchdowns. We're now up to Dave's teams here. So Dave had pick 5 and pick 11. Dave will start with pick number 5 and show everybody what you did with this roster. Again, you have the choice at the 5th pick. You might get one of the running backs like you did here in Bijan Robinson. Could take one of the receivers, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. You took Bijan, running back for your start with Robinson and Pacheco. A lot of receivers next. Very solid squad here. Adam, you're going to get the first word here. What do you think about how Dave built this roster from pick number 5?
Oh, I wrote in my notes, no issues with this team. You did the right thing by going RB, RB. We're all very proud of you, Dave. But I will expand. I do love this team. I think you did a tremendous job. And this is proof that running back can work, because the value at wide receiver in rounds 3, 4, and 5 is really good. It's just a really good group of receivers. I've said that before and been burned by it, but that is my read on the position this year. I think it's, it's a pretty deep position that goes early, so you're not getting these great players late in the draft, but 3, 4, and 5, those are good rounds for receivers. And you took wide receivers, Adams, Ayuk, and Pickens. I love that. I think this team would maybe be a lot worse if Ayuk gets traded to the Steelers and he is real teammates with Pickens, but assuming that doesn't happen, I think you did great. I usually insist on having a top 9 tight end. You don't have that, but Njoku's a pretty good consolation prize, and Love and Purdy. I mean, no complaints. I think you really did. This better be an A. If the producer didn't vote an A on this one, and then it's definitely Jamey who's voting. I'll tell you that.
It was not me voting. I think Dave did a great job, but I want to go back to the Ayuk Pickens back-to-back picks there.
Okay.
So did you take that into account when you were making those picks? Because obviously you didn't know how it was going to come back to you. If they are teammates, there's no way you'd be taking them in those spots.
Not a chance.
So just walk us through that thought process about, You took Pickens first, and then Ayuk came back to you. Was it just because the value was too good?
Ayuk went first.
I'm sorry,
and
you went
then
first.
Pickens made it back to me in round 5. And honestly, this is right about where I expect these guys to go. ADP matches it. Ayuk's going to be a round 4 pick. Pickens is going to be a round 5 pick. But I think if Brandon Ayuk were not holding out in San Francisco and was going to play week 1, no questions asked, he'd be earlier than round 4. I think people are just nervous about it. I'd be surprised if he's traded at this point. We're less than 10 days out from the start of the regular season. Guys getting traded now, premier guys like this, you almost never see it happen. So hopefully Ayuk is actually there for the 49ers. Now the concern is he might hold out from week 1, not play in the game. That would obviously hurt my team. But after going RB, I did slew it at wide receivers. Just really threw a lot at it. But I actually would nitpick myself on this team. When I took Christian Kirk, I could have had James Conner. And as much as you don't like James Conner, I would rather have James Conner than Zamir White. I could have taken Conner where I took Kirk. And Kirk might have made it back to me. His ADP is right at the 7-8 turn right now. And I think he's actually good value because he's going to be healthy for week 1. I think he could be a really good wide receiver 3 this year.
You waited on quarterback. You obviously are a Jordan Love guy, so how excited were you to get that pick?
Very, because I felt like I was stealing him from the rest of the league. I'm using the same line every time quarterback comes up. It's like Pavlov's dog at this point. But I do think that Jordan Love can match that 25 fantasy point per game average that we saw from him in his last 9 regular season games. It's a good receiving core, and even when they were banged up last year, Jamey, Jordan Love was playing well. He'll run a little bit on top of it. By all accounts, he had a good training camp, and the Packers offense, I think, will be better this year than they were last year. And you see the fantasy projection, he's 5th among quarterbacks. I love Jordan Love. I don't think he's 5th best among quarterbacks, but I think he is top 10. And so to get him late, waited on the position, felt very smart to get him. And then I got Brock Purdy a little bit later just to add a little cherry on top of that position.
And obviously you saw Marshawn Lloyd on the list. You wouldn't have taken him where you take him that by.
Actually, I might have, because if we have IR spots, now I can stash him. I can go to my waiver wire, pick up somebody off there.
Okay, so we'll see when Marshawn Lloyd is back. He's going to be out the first 4 games with that hamstring injury. Hopefully he can have an impact from week 5 on as a potential playing in tandem with Josh Jacobs. Let's see what the X poll showed us on how people viewed Dave's team. So you did get an A from production. Again, solid B, almost 42% of the votes going there. So a little split, though, between the A's and the C's. But
not as much as loved as your second team. Your team picking in 8, I believe.
Yes, team number 8. So we'll see. Maybe it's a sliding scale as the picks go back to the back end of the first round. Maybe people like those starts a little bit more. So your next team that you drafted in this pick-by-pick series was from the 11 spot, and we'll show everybody what you did here. Now we get into the range of a little uncertainty about who's going to be the guaranteed first-round picks. We know there's basically 9 guys that everybody loves, ending with A.J. Brown, and then we get to the Barkley, Taylor, Puka, Garrett Wilson group, and you started your team with Jonathan Taylor. You went running back, wide receiver, took a tight end in round 3. We're going to talk about Derrick Henry in round 4. That seems like an unbelievable steal, no matter how you feel about Henry. Getting him that late, essentially, is a great value pick. So, Adam, again, I'll let you start on picking apart Dave's team. I don't know if you gave this one an A as well, but another solid squad for Dave.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, 3 receivers, PPR. I think you probably want to walk out of there with a better receiving trio of Puka, Ridley, and Johnson. However, how can you pass up on Derrick Henry in the 4th round? Like, I have been very anti-Derrick Henry. He's had a mid-second round ADP. I put him in a bust column. I would have absolutely, I almost did take, because I had the 12th pick. I almost took him. I took Kamara instead. It's full PPR. But Henry, I mean, that was such a good pick. So it does make you weaker at wide receiver, but it wasn't necessarily the wrong thing to do. I like this team. I don't love it, Dave, because I'm not as sold on Calvin Ridley as you are. I would have taken Godwin, but even that, I don't know. I mean, again, I don't really have any beefs here. Just the Henry and Laporta back to back. When you don't get a receiver there, obviously you're going to be a little bit, but you got maybe the number 1 tight end, and you got Derrick Henry in the 4th round. So I think you did the right thing.
So I'm actually not as happy with this team as I was the first team. And it's because of what happened in rounds 3 and 4. And just to give a little context to everybody watching, I saw Trey McBride and Travis Kelce go right in front of where I took Sam Laporta. So getting Laporta as the 3rd tight end off the board, late round 3, I couldn't resist that. And then Derrick Henry falling into my lap, that sounds like it would hurt, but having that happen in round 4, I couldn't resist that either. But the price I paid for that was not getting awesome wide receivers other than Puka Nacua. And then I also took C.J. Stroud in round 6. I probably should have taken a wide receiver there. That would have made the team better, and then waited at quarterback. I think I would have liked that better. So I agree with you, Adam, on those picks in rounds 3 and 4. I think I had to take those values. I couldn't pass them up. But taking Stroud, that didn't feel like a steal. I know his ADP is early round 6. I took him in early round 6, basically. I felt like that wasn't the type of pick that I needed to make at that position at that time.
I don't agree. I like that pick. I love that pick. You know, get it. Like, who are you going to take? Are you going to take Zay Flowers or Christian Kirk? C.J. Stroud has much more league-winning potential than those guys.
So I think it's worth noting 2 things here. First off, know who you're drafting with. So we're going to see a lot of receivers get, again, pushed up higher in leagues where you're drafting with fantasy analysts or, you know, people that are in high-stakes leagues. They just tend to, you know, gravitate toward that position a little bit more. So that's why Derrick Henry, for example, falls to round 4. He's most likely going to be a late second, early third-round pick. And I know, Adam, you talk about this a lot on our podcast. In a 3-receiver league, if you take a tight end early, you're going to probably not have the deepest receiving core. And so taking Laporta is going to give you an advantage over most people at that position. But again, you're going to sacrifice some of your receiver depth, or at least, you know, some guys that you're starting. So that's, you know, kind of the give and take you have to deal with when you're taking a tight end a little bit earlier. I want to ask you about something you did a little bit later in the draft, was taking Elijah Mitchell. Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell, a lot of people want to know who's the handcuff to Christian McCaffrey. What's your take on it right now? Because Mitchell was banged up through the majority of training camp. Mason sort of come on and is the guy getting a lot of publicity and a lot of hype. Who do you prefer? And
Mason did look great in their last preseason game. I mean, outstanding vision and jump cuts. If you watch the game against Las Vegas, it was really, really good. I'm leaning toward Mitchell, though, because he's been in that role before. And as long as he's on the 49ers, then I think he's the one that would back up McCaffrey. If it ends up being wrong, though, Jordan Mason's going to end up being a great late-round pick for those that just stash him and see what happens in week 1. If he doesn't do anything in week 1, if Elijah Mitchell's that guy, they both might do nothing because Christian McCaffrey, fingers crossed, will be back. You just cut them and you move on. But those are the types of disposable late-round picks that fantasy managers can wrap their arms around.
And unfortunately, as we know, the minute you cut one of those guys, McCaffrey may win the lottery and take a week off, and then one of them becomes a superstar for a couple of weeks if, in fact, they are the starter for the 49ers. All right, let's see what the X-Crowd thought of Dave's team here. Again, got a solid B on the last one. Again, a solid B as well. Production standing by you, taking that A.
Nice.
So, again, 42% of the vote thinking that Dave got a B here. It feels like we're going to get a lot of Bs across the board based on our draft. So, we're going to take a break right now here on Fantasy Football Today. When we come back and take a look at Adam's 2 teams. He's got number 6 and number 12. We'll see what he did at the 1-2 turn, and also what he did in the middle of the first round. That's next on Fantasy Football Today. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. I'm Jamey. That's Dave. That's, let's see, another, Djokovic. Let's go with that. You're the Joker. All right. So the clock is ticking, Adam. You almost got your tennis match coming up here. Tell everybody where we can see this if we have the potential to watch.
If we're going to stream it, we're going to try. It's going to either be following me on Twitter at Adam Aizer, A-I-Z-E-R, or Dan Schneier. I think it's Dan Schneier NFL on Twitter. Follow one of those accounts. We're going to try to stream the game. Well,
he spells Aizer. He doesn't spell Schneier. How do we find Dan Schneier?
Who cares? Dan Loser.
Wow. Shots fired. Clip that and send that to Dan before he steps on the court. All right, let's take a look at Adam's 2 teams here in our pick-by-pick series. Again, you can see all 12 of these stories if you pick in those draft slots. It's very useful information to follow either the strategy, the players, or both. This is Adam's team from number 6 overall. Again, PPR, start 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. So he started with Jamar Chase, got him at number 6. Adam's favorite player of all time, Travis Etienne. His second favorite player of all time, Malik Neighbors, in round 3. This feels like a very Adam Aizer start and a very Adam Aizer team, A-I-Z-E-R. So, Dave, when you look at this roster from 6 overall, what stands out to you?
I see a bunch of R-E-A-C-H-E-S on this team. And taking Jamar Chase ahead of Justin Jefferson is one such example. I will agree that Chase has the better quarterback, but we've seen the production from Chase. We've seen the production from Jefferson with a worse quarterback than Chase has ever had, and I think that Jefferson is the better pick. I like Etienne in round 2. And 3 months ago, I would have told you that you're reaching on Malik Neighbors, but now I agree with you. In our drafts, he should go in round 3. He's got that high upside potential. Mark Andrews in round 4, Cooper in round 5 is fine, but then Jaden Daniels, You took him in round 6, and I like Jayden Daniels. I don't like him as much as Jamey, and I know Jamey would probably even say that round 6 would be just a little too rich for his blood when it comes to the rookie quarterback. So that, to me, is the most egregious reach of all, that you went with Jayden Daniels in round 6 when there were other quarterbacks on the board. But you did get a couple of decent steals at running back, Ramondre Stevenson in 7. I think Zach Moss in round 8 is okay. Little bit worried about your wide receivers after Amari Cooper, but the bottom line is that I think you could have had an even better team than what you had, Adam.
Adam, before I ask you a couple questions, so Dave, I just want to clarify something. He reached on Chase one spot ahead of Justin Jefferson, but he didn't reach on Malik Neighbors in the middle of round 3. That's not the reach, but the reach is Chase over Jefferson.
Measuring reaches is different in round 1 compared to round 3, and I don't think he reached at all on Malik Neighbors. I took Neighbors in round 3 in a draft on Friday with my friends. They all thought I was crazy for doing it. I knew he wasn't going to make it back to me. If you want an explosive, high-volume receiver, even with a bad quarterback, Heath, I think that Malik Neighbors is worth taking in that round 3 range.
All right, Adam. Defend yourself with all these reaches. Jefferson, Chase.
Remember what I said? The nice thing I said about Dave's team? This is unbelievable. And by the way, if the producers don't vote A on my Twitter poll, after they did it for both of your teams, I'm going to be very disappointed. But I love this team, actually. And I'll tell you, I made a mistake last year in my fantasy drafts of being too beholden to strategies. And I just kept drafting Trevor Lawrence, and I kept drafting Joe Burrow. I never really got out of my comfort zone. I tried to do that with this team. I have not drafted a lot of the top 4 tight ends. I drafted Mark Andrews here, and I've been waiting a very long time on quarterback, and I haven't gotten Jayden Daniels at all. So this was really one of the first times I drafted Jayden Daniels in a while. And I wanted to see, could I like this team? Yeah, I could have taken James Conner over Jayden Daniels and then waited another round for a quarterback. That would have maybe made my team look better on paper. But I showed myself that I could take a tight end in round 4 and a quarterback in round 6 and still come away with a team that I really love. I have 3 LSU Tigers. So you got Jayden Daniels throwing to Chase at Neighbors. So we got chemistry there. This actually is one of my favorite teams that I've drafted. Obviously, with ETN and a hero RB build, I had to go heavy running back late in the draft. Stevenson, Moss, Eckler, Charbonnet, Bigsby. And I really like Jared Goff this year. So if I reach for Daniels and he doesn't work out, Goff was my last pick or second to last pick. I actually am surprised at Dave's reaction because this was one of my favorite teams that I've drafted.
So we got Zach Moss on the screen here. Are you a Moss guy or a Chase Brown guy? And let's hope that Samaje Perine, if he is released, not traded, that he does not end up in Cincinnati. But break down the Bengals backfield for us.
I'm a Moss guy. He's a better pass protector. If they sign Perine or trade for him, that might hurt Moss more than it would hurt Brown. Brown's more explosive, but Moss is built to get 15 carries. I don't think Chase Brown is built that way. He's a little smallish for me. Doesn't really break any tackles. So I'm a Zach Moss guy. I think I see them go back to back so frequently. I don't have a strong conviction, but I like Moss.
I prefer Chase Brown, but again, I'm looking more for upside. Moss to me is a little bit nerve-wracking with the injury history, but we really don't know how this Bengals backfield is going to look. We didn't get a chance to see very much of it in any preseason games. All right, let's see if production voted for you. Let's see what the X. Oh, you got the A. You got the A. And you got a 45%, of the vote for B.
Yeah,
that's one of the higher ones.
Everybody was in the 40% for B.
But we were like 41, 42, 45%.
Yeah, we had higher A percentages.
That big reach of Jamar Chase over Justin Jefferson, so that gave you the edge.
My arms are tired.
All right, so there's your team at number 6. Let's move now to your team at number 12. Again, this is the spot where a lot of fantasy managers don't like to be, the end of the first round, because, again, you're missing out on the top 9 players. And you did something interesting. I think most people would just say Barkley goes 1, Harrison goes 2. That's kind of the way you look at it. When you took Harrison first, I was like, whoa, what is he going to do here? And you took Barkley with the second-round pick. So really didn't matter the order, but, again, you took Harrison first. Alvin Kamara, again, another one of your favorite guys. So you stayed in your comfort zone in this draft, taking him in the 3rd round. Devontae Smith, Chris Godwin, Joe Burrow, you see the picks here. Very good value on Aaron Jones, as a matter of fact. So, Dave, when you look at this roster, did he reach? Is he happier with this team than you were the last team? Remember, he was very kind to you. Let's see how you grade this one.
I don't care how kind he is to me. You know what, though? I do like this team. And the player that I really want to focus on isn't Harrison. And fantasy managers should just get used to Harrison being a first-round pick. He's deserving of it. And Barkley and Kamara, I think they still have at least one more good year left. I wonder if we're all collectively too low on Devontae Smith. If he ends up moving into the slot, his numbers in the slot compared to when he plays wide are night and day different. And if he's going to be more of a slot receiver in Kellen Moore's version of this Philadelphia offense, then round 4 is going to end up being a steal for Adam for Devontae Smith. Bona fide number 2 wide receiver with upside for him to maybe finish as a top 12 type of wide receiver by the time the season's over if he plays in the slot a lot. I think Joe Burrow was a good pick. I don't love the Aaron Jones pick, but he's your 3rd running back, so I don't have a problem with that. And you got your guy, Caleb Williams. I don't like drafting Caleb Williams to be my starter. This was perfect for you to get Joe Burrow, and then if Caleb Williams ends up being what you think he's going to be, Adam, you're going to be able to trade him for something nice as the season rolls out. I think this team is deserving of that A vote from the producers.
Just before we go to Adam, where do you have Devontae Smith ranked?
I think I've got him ranked as a top 24 wide receiver, but not quite as high as. I guess I need to develop a little bit more conviction on.
Yeah, he's top 20 for me. I feel very similar about him that I do T. Higgins and Jalen Waddle. They're an injury away from being absolute monsters and very good on their own as well. So Adam, I actually didn't mind the Aaron Jones pick because you got him around 7, and I'm not an Aaron Jones guy, but the value at that point was just too hard to pass up. But I like the Godwin selection. I love the Jake Ferguson selection. So just defend your team, I guess, a little bit if Dave's a little bit more critical maybe than you would have hoped because he doesn't care how you feel.
No, I think Dave was kind to me on this one. I appreciate it. I think my team, round 6, 7, and 8 were what made my team good, better anyway. Joe Burrow, Aaron Jones, Jake Ferguson. Again, I really want to get a top 9 tight end. I was able to get Jake Ferguson in round 8. I feel the same way about Aaron Jones. He's not a guy that I target, but he just kept on falling. And then Burrow gives me a chance to have a great player there. It's actually the Devontae Smith pick that makes me the most nervous. I took him because, again, like, get out of your comfort zone. I never really draft Devontae Smith, but there's been so much buzz. It reminds me of Brandon Ayuk last year, where everybody on the Niners, all the reporters, they were telling us how great of a camp Brandon Ayuk is having, how he's going to have this big year. Getting the same vibes for Devontae Smith, also Jalen Hurts. He seems to just be having a killer training game. So I did want to get some Devontae Smith. You know, I could have taken DK Metcalf and sort of just known what I had, or T. Higgins or something like that. I went with a little bit of an upside gamble there, and he might make or break my team.
All right, let's see if the X poll is in favor of this. Another A from production. 46%. Not a lot of the support from the A perspective, but definitely a lot of support from the B perspective. I think that's the